Hi, this is Kathy at My Best Year, and I'm excited today because we have Dr. Deanna Minnick, who is talking to us about her new book that comes out tomorrow. I wish that I could have it in my little hands here to show you, but tomorrow I will have it in my hands. I somehow discovered Deanna on Facebook a couple years ago, and it was actually through seeing the beautiful artwork and colors and what people refer to as memes, inspirational words and pictures that go around in social media. And I just loved what you had on there, Deanna. So I've been,
Thank you so much.
yeah, been following you for a while. And when I saw that you were interested in detoxifying and had your new book coming out, I am really excited to hear more about that. So you're a researcher, an author, nutritionist, speaker, teacher, and artist. I love that combination. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, both personally and professionally?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you so much, Kathy, for having me as part of this great webinar series that you normally offer. It's really a pleasure to see how we all connect through social media and find our ways and who we really align to. So yeah, my background is I had a lot of personal issues when I was growing up, just health issues. I had a lot of inflammatory conditions like endometriosis, irritable bowel syndrome. I had a lot of skin inflammation. My mom was a health nut when I was growing up, and so I never really wanted to look at nutrition as a way to solve my problems, but I eventually got there because I had to. I had tried so many other things, and food and eating just seemed to be one of those things that was working once I started to really invest in it and take it seriously. I did find, however, that it wasn't just about food and eating for me. There were a lot of emotional components. There were things about how I was thinking. I spent a lot of time in school and I wasn't being very creative. I was being very intellectual, very organized. And so all along my path of life, I essentially started to create this amalgam of looking at myself in a very holistic way, and then I started to, once I was done with school and I went into clinical practice, I started to work with others in this very holistic way. And the holistic way that I work with people is kind of unique. It's not just mind, body, spirit. I have taken essentially 7 different colors, 7 different systems that we are connected to both physiologically and psychologically. And then I've created a program around that. So the 7 colors, the 7 different aspects of the self, 7 modalities. In my world, everything is 7.
Oh, great.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. So in the book that you will get tomorrow, you will see how every day of the detox program, and it's called Whole Detox for that very reason, because it really addresses the whole person, whole self. You'll see how all of those different modalities and things sync together.
Great. I just want to mention to our audience that today we had some issues getting Deanna on the video, so I really apologize that you can't see her, but we're going with the flow here, and we've got her on my speakerphone, and just appreciate Deanna's flexibility and your flexibility as well. So thank you for that. Yeah, the other night I was having dinner with multiple friends, and we went to Loving Hut here in Portland, and one of them asked me, so what's new with you, Kathy? And she was there with her husband, who I didn't know quite as well. And his name is Daniel, and it's actually Daniel Redwood. So.
Oh my goodness. Yes, I know him very well.
Yeah. So it was hilarious because his wife Beth said, what's new? And I just said, well, I'm really excited because I get to do this interview with you.
And, oh, how sweet.
Yeah.
How sweet.
So Daniel told me what a great person you are and that he's really glad to get to work with you, etc. So.
Oh, he's fantastic. Yeah. So as part of some of the other things that I do, I teach at a few universities.
Oh, great.
So one of the universities I teach at is the one that he is very active in, which is the University of Western States. I teach as part of the graduate program. I teach a detox class.
That's great.
So that's really fun to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a small world sometimes.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And for, all we know, I could have mentioned something else like, hey, my cat's better or something like that. But
right. We don't know all those interconnections. They're broad and vast.
Yeah. So I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about the research part and then how you decided to become an author.
Well, this is my 5th book. This is baby number 5. So I think I was always slated to be a writer and to communicate concepts in written form. And I have a lot of passion for doing that because I teach a lot. And what ends up happening is students and participants, they actually want to go home with something to read more. So, the teaching is great when you're all in person and you do a workshop, but then you have to take it somewhere. You have to create that depth for them to dive into. So my first official book was in 2009. I wrote a book on chakras and food. So chakras are essentially the energy centers of the body, and food. So it's, even though I'm a PhD scientist, I can go through the whole spectrum and talk about food in a very quantum physics way as much as I can talk about food in a very physical, grounding, what does functional medicine say about this kind of way. So that's kind of where I've been. So this is a bigger book for me in that it really does present the culmination of my work over the past 15 years, if not even longer. So this one has a lot of staying power. It has a lot of research behind it based on me looking into the research and also just my own research too.
Yeah, great. You mentioned that you got into nutrition through some of your own health challenges, but you were trying kind of to avoid that. So I find that interesting. A lot of people feel like nutrition doesn't have that big of an impact on our lives. I think Americans kind of live their lives that way. Like, oh yeah, we can eat whatever and then just, be healthy at least when we're young. And then maybe it catches up with us when we're older. So how did nutrition start changing your outlook on that? Like here again, you said originally you're trying to kind of go other routes and then landed on nutrition.
Yeah, that's a really good question. When I was 9 years old, my mom, it was in the 1970s, and that was the time that it really wasn't cool to be a health nut. You truly were a nut.
My mom was a health nut
really, too. Yeah, well, that's kind of, our moms were cutting edge with what I'm learning now, but at the time it wasn't really cool. I'd come home and my mom is, exercising to Richard Simmons. She's baking Adele Davis bread.
Yes.
She's reading books on food additives. I could read a food label by the time I was 9. I knew what mono and diglycerides were. So, I had this thing when I was really young that everything was really strict and confined and I couldn't have certain things. And it just made me feel different. And I didn't like it. It felt very depriving. And so I became more or less an emotional eater. I ate a lot of sugar. Sugar is still something even now in my mid-40s, I still, if I'm not careful, it's something I can easily default to, sugar, chocolate. We all have those connections with food in different ways, but I have a different relationship with it. I kind of see it as symbolic. So as I was moving through my teenage years, definitely had lots of emotional eating issues. I had really bad endometriosis. I had some gut issues, and of course, those two things go hand in hand. And I had in my opinion, I thought I had acne, even though my mom says, "Oh, you never had acne." Oh, yes, I did. I remember. Most teenagers do because they eat like crap, and they're stressed out. So in my 20s, I never wanted to do anything with nutrition. I was really a science nerd and geek, and I wanted to do something with science, and I started working for medical doctors during the summers and worked at the hospital. And soon I found out that, you know what, medicine is not for me. It just felt kind of like a mill where people come in, they get drugs, they move on, they come back, they get more drugs, they move on. They never seem to really get better. At least when I was, I was part of a lot of these consultations as a medical assistant, and I just decided to let go of being a medical doctor. And I was at this point, I remember it was my junior year of my undergraduate years, and essentially what I decided to do was to go into nutrition of all things, not to be a dietitian, but to be a researcher. I really wanted to apply more of the science angle to food. So I thought, this is very preventative, it's science-based, and that's what I want to do. So, and I started bringing more of that into my own life too.
Great. One of the things that I tend to tell people is that nutrition is quite controversial. I sometimes say that it's almost as controversial as religion. And it's very,
as one and the same.
yeah. And it's very personal. Are there any key cornerstones of what you found to be a healthy diet from what you've studied?
Yeah, I have things that apply to most people. I would say colorful whole food, plant-based. Doesn't mean that people can't eat other types of food, but the science is strongest for when we eat whole, colorful, plant-based foods. It just is. Tons of studies on tons of conditions. And, hands down, you can't argue with the science. There are epidemiological or population studies. There are clinical trials. There are animal studies. There are cell studies. There are studies looking at cancer. There are studies looking at cardiovascular disease. There are studies looking at diabetes. So, hands down, you can't argue with color or plants. Plants, even meat eaters are eating plants.
Right.
Vegans are eating plants. We're all eating plants, and thankfully so, because I feel like that's where a lot of the medicinal qualities are in foods.
There's something about a living organism that just sort of tends to have more energy to it than, something that's super processed and packaged up with chemicals, etc. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And, that's why, throughout the whole detox, what I like to focus on is colorful food. Not M&Ms, not Skittles, not candy, but I'm talking like raspberries, papaya, pineapple, all these things that probably you don't get a lot of. Usually what I find is that people get into food ruts. They start the same thing day after day. And I have even done this myself, which is why I know this. It's just too much sometimes to think about food. You get into your comfort zone. You don't want to think about food when you're in the grocery store. So you just kind of do the same things. If they work for you and they taste good, you just keep going back to them. So within the whole detox program, one of the things that we focus on is variety. And the variety is a really key point for health, because we need that variety of different health compounds in order to make things work and flow better in the body.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, you mentioned detoxification. Tell us how the body becomes more toxic or inflamed, and then what helps it go to the detoxified, less inflammation range.
So we are all toxic. There's no question about it. We're bombarded with physical toxins in the environment. The amount of environmental chemicals has exponentially increased over time. So there's something in the neighborhood of like 80,000 different contaminants in the environment. So no matter where you live, I live in a pristine forest region in the Pacific Northwest, and you think that, you get less things there, but it's not true. Every area, doesn't matter if it's a city or it's a farm, you're going to be exposed to something. Maybe it's air pollution in the city, maybe it's pesticides in the rural area. So we have these physical contaminants, right? There's no way to avoid them. We also have things that we internally generate, things like emotional toxins, things like toxic thoughts, things like stress, which can also stress can propel the inflammatory cascade.
Oh, yeah.
Just like these environmental contaminants.
Mm-hmm.
So stress is a big hairy monster when it comes to being a toxin. It's one of the biggest, I think. Mm-hmm. So we've got all those things that are bombarding us. And then you asked me, how do we detoxify? Well, classically, the body gets rid of things through poop, pee, sweating, and crying. Okay. Fluids. Mm-hmm. Anything that's getting out. We go to the gym or we go outside to move our bodies. We sweat. We are getting toxins out. Actually, not just the physical toxins, but quite honestly, it's also good for us emotionally to do those things too. Mm-hmm. The problem comes in because, number one, all of us are very different in how we detoxify. Okay. We have different genes. We have different environments. We're doing different things. Maybe we're not sweating. Maybe we're not pooping as much as we should. Mm-hmm. So there are so many variables there. Mm-hmm. And then secondly, maybe we're just not doing it regularly enough. Maybe, we are so strapped by our schedules and we just are not making the time to do it on a consistent basis. Mm-hmm. So we all need some type of detox. And if you look at historical accounts of cleansing and purification, one of the first things that was done if somebody had a disease was bloodletting. Mm-hmm. Either you cut into somebody and bleed them, or you apply leeches and you take that blood out because the humors that were in them were toxic. Mm-hmm. Sanguine, and they had all these names for the different humors and how they're coming from, the bilious humor, the livery. They knew these things. Mm-hmm. And so the ancients brought these things forward, and even in spiritual traditions, and this is why I say that there's no real separation between nutrition and religion, because many of these eating practices evolved during religious and spiritual practices. Mm-hmm. You look at, for right now, for Catholics, this is the time of Lent or fasting in some way, or letting mm-hmm. go of something. Right. Maybe it's not food, maybe it's swearing, maybe it's having fish on Friday, or whatever it is. And then there are other traditions. In Islam, you have Ramadan. In Judaism, you've got various times of fasting. Mm-hmm. and really, strong spiritual cleansing. So, there are all these different ways to look at detoxification. So, there's a lot of debate about detox. People say, "Oh, well, I don't need to detox because my body's doing it already." Mm-hmm. But it is to a certain extent. We're not all very efficient in it. Okay. And because we're just much more toxic, we're not really getting these things out as well as we should be. Okay.
So how does that look in your own life? Just to give me kind of an example of how you apply the detoxification process.
Yes. So for me personally, I feel like I eat pretty clean. There are certain things that I feel like I succumb to. So, I want to be a little bit more strict than other times. But mm-hmm. what I do like to do is I guide people through twice a year. I do a separate detox program. Oh, okay. So it's online, and it's 21 days, and we're actually about to start on March 17th is when we start our prep days. Okay. So for me, this feels really good because it's almost like, you become really aware, really conscious. And it's funny because I had an email from somebody today who said, I really want to do your detox on March 17th, but time is just such a factor. And I wrote her back and I said, there's no good time for a detox. There's absolutely not. We're always going to have something going on in our lives. So what we have to do is just kind of be like the Zen master, where we kind of do Aikido through our daily life and try to do our best mm-hmm. to bring in some of these ways to detox, mm-hmm. And just do it as well as we can. Don't expect perfection. Right. So that's what I do personally. I like to do the 2 times a year dedicated call-out session of detoxifying with all the people that come on board with me. Okay. And then for myself, kind of depends on what I need. Sometimes I need, quite honestly, just to be in nature. nature is very regenerating, rejuvenating. You know, there are even studies on what they call forest bathing, where in Japan they have shown in their research that being in a forest, and we know this, by the way, you know, we know when you hear it, you're going to say, of course, but they've actually measured heart rate, blood pressure, cortisol, and found that when people are in a forest for a couple of hours, that this has lasting effects on their cardiovascular parameters for like up to a week.
Wow.
Up to a week just from being in a forest. Like, let's just say you go hiking on a weekend and then you come back on Sunday. For 1 week, you can have a positive effect on your physiology just by having that dedicated hike.
Great.
So me personally, I'm if you were seeing me right now today, I was thinking about our webinar that we were going to have, and I wore green.
Oh, okay.
Because I love the color green, and it's a very healing color, and it's the color of what I call the love system. It's the color for the heart.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I like nature personally.
Yeah. Great. I have a friend that I walk with once a week in Forest Park. So now it makes more sense. Number one, we walk for 6 miles and we're in nature, and we also get to catch up on our lives and share what's been hard and what's been good.
Nice.
So that just reinforces that it's a good practice for sure.
That's fabulous. Well, and you're exponentially increasing your benefit because you're with a supportive, caring friend. And so now you've got the supportive community plus nature, and that is synergistic compared to just being in nature alone. So you're doing it.
Yeah.
You're definitely doing it.
And then the other thing that I've done is normally with the change of seasons, do my own form of detoxifying, raw cleansing. And living in the Pacific Northwest, I've chosen just to do it spring, summer, and fall. And then in winter, I declutter my house instead of my body.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the home represents us. It is really, if you look at Jungian archetypal psychology, anytime we have dreams about a house or, you know, the house represents us on many levels. And so if you've got clutter or stagnation or blocks in the house, chances are, you know, that kind of stuff, you feel it. You walk into a cluttery house, you feel that.
Right. Yeah.
So it starts there.
Yeah. Well, great. Tell us a little bit more what's in your book and in your program, your 21-day program.
The book is very practical. I'm very practical. I'm pretty organized, and so the book has essentially these 7 chapters, and every chapter is dedicated to a color and a system of health to help you understand it. And then the other chapter that we have is the 21-day program.
Okay.
You know, essentially it takes you through day by day for 21 days, tells you exactly what you need to do, what you need to eat. There are 7 different things every day to do.
Okay.
There's also, you'll like this, there's a colorful insert. So there's a table in there with kind of a chart summarizing everything. There are lots of different tools, you know, lots of different ways to, like there's an emotion log, there is a resources section. Right. And one other thing I didn't mention is one of the ways that I personalize the detox programs for everybody is that there's a questionnaire. So you do the spectrum quiz, and you can do the quiz even online. So I have on my website, whole-detox.com, if you go up to the top, it says quiz. You just essentially put in your email and you kind of go through this whole quiz. It takes about 15 minutes. There's no charge for it. You know, it's just some good information for you to have, so you can take that information and tailor your detox accordingly. So that's what the book focuses on is, okay, there are these 7 systems. Each of them have a color. Where do you line up in your 7 systems? Are there imbalances? And if there are, you know, here's where you focus. You focus a little bit more on these parts.
Great.
So yeah, it's very practical. I think you'll like it for that aspect.
Yeah. One of our audience members, her name's Adrienne, and she mentioned that she did take your quiz online. And
oh, good.
she said she got really high numbers, which she said actually high numbers are not good. And that she was especially high in fire and spirit. So she just wanted to know, one of her questions was what might help balance that.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good question. So with fire, most people, including myself, have some imbalance in fire. So Adrienne, you don't have to feel alone. That's like one of the main imbalances that people have. And the fire system correlates with digestion. It's about work-life balance. It's about trying to juggle it all. It's about a lot of, different things for different people. But essentially, this is where we hold all of kind of the ins and outs of everyday living back and forth. And many times we're putting out a lot. We're not taking in so much. So we get really drained and we start having gut issues, or we, any number of things. We feel inflammation, a lot of fire. This is called fire for a reason. This is the element in this part of the body. So what do you do for that? You work on that, then that can ripple through and start to heal and change the other systems too. So within the whole detox book, Adrienne, what you'll find is for the fire system, there's a whole bunch of different things you can do. And you'll see at the end of the chapter, it's like, okay, avoid these things, do these things. But let me just pull out one thing that I talk about within the program. It's about thoughts. It's about, just even doing a really simple inventory of what takes your energy and what gives you energy. Just take a piece of paper, make a list on one side. What gives me energy? Like taking a walk, being with my dog, being, around my friends. And then right on the other side, what takes energy? And usually people with fire imbalance have more things that take their energy than give them energy. So what I talk about, it's so common. It is so common. So, that's one simple exercise to do.
Great.
For the spirit imbalance means it can mean a lot of different things, but the spirit part of us is about really connecting to life in a way that gives us a sense of purpose and meaning. So, again, the spirit system means everything from the nervous system to being exposed to maybe even EMS. It's about purification. It's about the spiritual part of us rather than the physical part of us. So usually when people have a spirit imbalance, they're feeling kind of a loss of really feeling connected to the whole. It's kind of like, what is my purpose? What is my meaning in life? What am I here to do? What's my calling? So we talk about that within Whole Detox a bit. We talk about doing some quiet time, some meditation, kind of pulling back from food, and really thinking about our interconnections and creating more awe around just our everyday life. And, there's one card that I have an affirmation statement on. I have a deck of cards called Nourish Your Whole Self cards. And one of them says, every meal is a miracle.
Wow.
So it's kind of like when you have a spirit imbalance, it's kind of saying like, oh, everything is really just so, it's bigger than me. And I'm part of this huge web. And, this is just beautiful. And it's kind of finding I would say your lust for life again. The sense that, you're really engaged and dynamic and really connected.
Right. Yeah. Well, great. Adrienne, thank you for asking that question.
I love that. Yes. Thank you, Adrienne.
Yeah. How does you being an artist fit into the work that you do?
Oh, you ask really good questions. Art was one of my conduits to healing, quite honestly. So when I had a lot of these issues with endometriosis, I really just put my left brain on and I started doing all kinds of food interventions, nutrients, supplements. I went gung-ho, and I knew a lot about women's health because I was lecturing on it. So it's like, how can I have endometriosis? I know what to do when it comes to food.
Right.
So, so what I started to dive into was, and it wasn't even a rational process. I think it was more like my right brain kicked in, and it was like, you need to just get feminine, get creative, get more emotional. and I started painting.
Oh, wow.
And I started painting in my late 20s, really. And I'm not trained at all as a painter. I use acrylics. I have used watercolor. I like very vivid colors. I like color saturation. I like a lot of swirls and organic spirals, very feminine shape.
Yes, me too.
And do you too?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I'm attracted to swirls
it's
for some
pleasing.
reason.
You know, it's something that we find in nature already.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I just started painting like crazy. In fact, not too long ago, just 2 weekends ago, I think it was, I just made 3 more paintings, and I just got into blue and green. And, you know, that's where, like, my science mind just shuts off, and I just really get into it. I just, I put on music. I just go with, the canvas to me is just like, anything goes, and I just keep going with it, and I'm, you know, making these spirals, using the color. And it's almost like I'm just part of this. It's an otherworldly experience, actually. Like when you're really in the zone of painting and not doing it for professional reasons.
Right.
You know, I'm not thinking about selling paintings. I'm not doing this for a living. You know, I'm just doing it for fun. It just really puts me in the zone.
Yeah.
And I think we're all artists. You know, we're all artists of different types. You know, I look at my husband, who's an acupuncturist.
Okay.
He's a musician. He's not classically trained. He just likes to make music. It's like his outlet. For other people, it's maybe dancing or singing. Or I had one woman in one of the whole detox programs, and for her it was haiku. She would grace us almost every day with some kind of haiku that she had written, and she'd been inspired. It almost feels like, you know, when people are inspired or they feel emotional, they feel the urge to create and let that out. And I call that, you know, that's part of the flow system, as I call it.
Yeah, great. Well, if anybody out in the audience has other questions, please type them in and I can ask them of Deanna. There's a little bit of a delay, so I will also just go on to some other questions while you do that. Well, we already talked about spirituality and health. You did a great job with that. And then one of my other questions was, what other aspects besides nutrition are in your book? But perhaps even how you talked about Adrian's question kind of answers that, or I don't know if you want to elaborate on that. How much is nutrition versus other things, maybe is a good question.
The book is Functional Nutrition Meets Mind-Body Medicine. Okay. There's no real division. There are recipes, but then there are also affirmations, there are guided visualizations, there are meditations, there are emotional exercises, there are limiting thought exercises. It's a fusion, and I really, you know, I feel like I belong to 2 different worlds, and I'm trying to, you know, it's just part of me to integrate these 2 because I don't see them as separate. You know, how we eat is going to change how we live and think and breathe and act and what emotions we have. So the book is, it's foodie, you know, that's for sure. It definitely has an omnivore track, and then it has a vegan track. Okay, great. Because I don't believe in one way of eating for everybody. So it's you get the recipes, and things are very creative and colorful. Like every day there's a color, so then the recipes align to those colors. Like the first 3 days are all about the color red. So all the recipes, like the first day, I think we have what I call the root to be toot shake. So it's all like red root vegetables, like beets. And so, you know, everything is color coded and very foodie. But then there's also this other side of really connecting in much deeper into, you know, the metaphorical, connecting into the mind-body interface. And I have just very easy ways to help people do that without it seeming like it's woo-woo. It's like, you know, there's really good science on this stuff. And you know what most people, when I've had them review the book or look at it, what people have said to me is that they really like the idea that I focus on the science of colors. Like I actually went into the science just to see, is there any science on red, the color red, and what it does to you? What about the color orange? What about the color yellow? And I scoured all the publications to look for, you know, what do those colors do to us? Because I know that I know that they're powerful. So that's also in the book, and that's probably an unexpected angle that most people won't anticipate, but will really enjoy it.
Great. Wow. I'm getting more excited for that shipment to come tomorrow. Yeah.
Well, I can't wait. I think, and if you're at, since you're in Oregon, I'll be at the Nutrition Therapist Association meeting. The
Okay.
conference that is March 18th, I believe I'm speaking.
Okay.
NTA. Would love to meet you and any of your other your fellow listeners here if they happen to be in the area. I've got lots of different speaking engagements, so I always like to meet people when I'm out and about.
Great. And would I find that as events on your main Facebook page too?
You bet.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be on there. Otherwise, you can go to my website, deannaminich.com.
Okay.
DeannaMinich, and you should find it there. But I think on Facebook we have them too.
Okay, because I want to look into that. That would be fun. So we have Kathy from Vancouver, Washington, and she's asking, can you describe the basic detox plan? What kind of foods? Is it all raw or vegan? Trying to discern how it might be similar to what I've done with what I myself have done with seasonal cleanses, because this friend Kathy is the one that I walk with in Forest Park, and she's done some raw cleansing with me.
Oh, nice. Okay. Well, to answer the question about raw, no, it's not raw. So it's a combination of different things. So usually for the morning, it's a smoothie. So some kind of fresh, colorful smoothie. And then for the lunch, it's typically something raw, like a salad with something cooked, like either soup, or if you're doing the omnivore track, there might be like a chicken breast or something, or if you're doing the vegan track, there might be legumes. And then for dinner, usually there's something cooked. And so I've more or less structured that based on Ayurvedic principles. But not everybody does well with raw, not everybody does really well with cooked. In fact, the studies show that, for different conditions, maybe it's a blend that really suits people. So it's, like I mentioned, there is a vegan track, and then there's an omnivore track. So if you only eat plant food and no animal food, you can work with the program. And if you do a more paleo style of eating, you can do that too. Now, one of the things that I did in the book that I didn't do before in the other programs is I made it even easier. Like, for example, cooking a little bit more at dinner so that you can bring certain things over for lunch. So it's not so maintenance heavy, because some of the detoxes I was doing very early on, people were saying, well, gosh, this is, so many beautiful foods, but it's really expensive. And it's just, I'm in the kitchen a lot. So what I tried to do was just make it super efficient in the way of bringing certain foods over to other meals.
Got it. Yeah.
So, yeah, like even on days 19 to 21, where we focus on the spirit, I have people have less food, and there's a broth that I call the divine broth. So they make some of that, and then they have that for those 3 days. So, it's pretty efficient in the way of, I know that we've had families do this. There's one woman in Australia who also got her kids on board and got them really excited with the colors, and she felt like she could do the food. Yeah. So I think it's suitable for most people to follow. And again, it's like smoothie plus something more raw and fresh for lunch, and then something more cooked for dinner. And the common thread out of all three of those meal times is lots of color, a ton of color.
Got it.
Super saturated.
So it sounds like it's quite organized, but that it also has some flexibility. I like how you've done that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So to her basic question about, what else is in it, it is taking out a lot of the main allergens, and a lot of the main intolerances and sensitivities are taken into account. Like there's no gluten in the program. There's no dairy. There's no soy. There's no sugar outside of, I think in some recipes I put some honey, and that's because there's actually some incredible benefit from honey for different things. There's no eggs, and that's always a challenging one for people to give up. No caffeine, no soft drinks, of course. It's basically taking out a lot, but then what you're putting in are really great, colorful, interesting foods. And that's where I like to have people focus, is on that part.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people talk about clean eating, and clean eating sounds very similar to what you're doing, in that it's taking out processed foods, eating whole foods, and taking out foods that cause inflammation. Like you mentioned, the sugars, the caffeines, the white flours, and, more.
You bet.
Those are the
Right.
things that tend to make us most inflamed, and most disease is about inflammation.
Yeah, inflammation is a huge factor. It's the bedrock of most chronic diseases. And in addition, it's hard to separate things out, but inflammation coincides with oxidative stress, with mitochondrial dysfunction, with insulin resistance, with stress response. I mean, it's all interconnected. So we could take the entry point from inflammation, but we could also talk about insulin. We could also talk about cortisol. It's all, we're one big web. So, yeah, these foods, when we take them out, we reduce a lot of that noise. And when we bring in a lot of the colorful foods, we're not just reducing the noise, we're potentiating optimal health and trying to get the body into balance. It's yin and yang. It's really bringing the two together.
Now, is your program like a low-calorie program, or how would you? I
don't focus on calories at all.
Great.
In fact, it's really interesting because out of all my time in the clinic seeing patients, when I would just give them a list of foods and just say, eat this, they would end up eating less than they would normally before they started the program, because a lot of the foods were just higher in fiber and higher in, just kind of, they were more nutrient dense. Yeah, so I never focus on calories. I think it's, at least for me and my approach, my philosophy is just eat the foods that are in nature and everything will take care of itself, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And I really have seen that clinically. That's not just a glib statement. That's like something that I've seen grounded in clinical trials.
Right.
And I think longer term, even though I call this a detox and it's a 21-day program, what I really want people to do is to have lifestyle change.
Yes.
In fact, somebody on Facebook had commented recently. She said that out of all the detoxes that she had ever done, this is the only one that really changed her life.
Great.
And she's like, I can't explain why, but or pinpoint it to one particular thing, but there's something about the dynamic of all of it's coming together, being, looking at these 7 different aspects of who we are. So I think, it's there's something bigger that goes on when we enter into these types of programs. We create an intention.
Yes.
And then towards the end, what I ask everybody is, I have one question that I ask, and I say, what is the one thing? What is the one thing that you're going to take into your everyday life? Even if it's one small thing, like, you know what, I'm just going to eat the rainbow every day. Or, you know what, I'm just going to take a 15-minute walk every day.
Great.
So we try to use the detox to create a healthy lifestyle.
Wonderful. Yeah. Yeah, you and I do have a lot in common just in hearing what you're saying. It sounds like also that it's not restrictive, which those diets that focus on calories can be. And sometimes I think it gets confusing because other people's detoxes at times are really low calories, maybe juicing for 3 days, and not focusing on instilling healthy habits and how to transition from that to real life. So people in real life might not be eating quite so great and then do, a few days of juice and then go back to whatever their real life is.
100%. I'm totally on the same page with you on that. It's almost like we are looking at food mechanically when we do that. Like we get into these phases of analysis paralysis where it's like, oh my gosh, I can't eat that. But then an 80-calorie brownie is going to be different than an 80-calorie apple. It's not about just the calories that we're putting into our bodies. It's about the informational signals that we get from those foods. Yes. Are they rich in colored phytonutrients? Are they rich in nutrients just overall? That's what we're looking at, is the quality of the food. I'd almost rather people have, and typically this, again, it doesn't tend to happen just because there's so much fiber in the foods, but I definitely do not focus, even though the recipes are crafted so that it is one portion size. Okay. I still tell people, eat as much. If you find, like, some people get into the detox and they say, I need more food. perfect, eat more.
Yeah.
Just make more next time. Or some people say, oh my gosh. In fact, I have more people say that it was too much food. And I think because their bodies are getting used to more of those plant foods and they're not used to them. And it's like, whoa, I feel really full. That's fiber. They don't know it's the fiber per se, but they just feel more full. They haven't had this sensation before.
Yeah.
So it all works out.
Yeah. Well, great. It looks like I'm not getting any other questions, and like we've covered a lot. So I just really want to congratulate you on this wonderful book and appreciate you taking the time today to share your wisdom. And Kathy, who just asked that last question, said she's going to get the book for sure. So, and I'm sure others will as well. So I posted that information as an offer up there so people can just click on the link and go to that page. And in fact, I think I don't know what time it ends, like at midnight tonight or tomorrow, where there's those freebies that are available.
It's only until midnight tonight, so people have to do it today to get their pre-order gifts. Yep, we're down to the wire on that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of other digital freebies and access to information. If you click on that, it should bring you to that information. Or if anybody has any challenges finding it, just let me know and I'll send you that link. No problem at all.
Great.
Yep. So,
Kathy, thank you so much. It's so nice to hear that we're of like minds and we're on the same wavelength. And I'd like to offer you a free entry into the detox program. I think that now with your book in hand starting tomorrow, would love to have you on the journey. So just email us and let the team know that I've just given you a free entry, but I want you to be part of the experience. I think that you'll really enjoy it.
Great. Well, thank you. I'm honored. That's awesome. So. Yeah.
And we have guests, you know, it's different than the other detox programs. We have people like Dr. Kelly Brogan, Anthony William, Dr. Frank Lipman, and Dr. Joel. You know, we've just got a bunch of people that we're going to be live, you know, webinars where people can ask questions just like you're doing right now. So I think you'll love it for that too.
Yeah. Excited. That's great. Yeah. Well, thank you again to our audience today for tuning in, whether you tuned in live or are watching the replay. Appreciate you taking the time. This month is all about health. So this morning you should have gotten your movement challenge. We want to start that on the 10th and do that through the end of the month. It's all about being gentle. And then we're going to start our clean eating challenge on the 21st. So you'll get another email with some of those details. And really what I'm hearing is we can totally use this book to be our clean eating challenge. Just do the 21-day program she's outlined here. So anyways, thank you very much. I'll let you all go for now and see you next month.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.